Hello.
Hello. How are you?
Good. Are you going to pour the l'chaim? You should pour a little bit more because this is going to be very difficult for me, this show today. We're going to be talking about the Messiah, okay?
Okay.
And I'm going to explain a little bit how I feel about this whole situation, this topic. Okay, ready? Amen. L'chaim.
L'chaim.
You poured me more than yours. Okay. So.
Okay. Well.
So the topic of the Messiah.
Okay.
I have a really difficult time with this topic because it reminds me. So in driving my car, I would see these guys with these signs. The end is coming. Repent. Your time is near. And I look at them as I drive by and I think, those are crazies. Those are the crazies, right? All right, so fast forward a little bit. I'm teaching, I don't know if you know this, but I used to teach at the prison, women's prison down south, Miami. And I would teach these classes to the women, the Jewish women. And I would ask them, what topics do you want to talk about? Because I would go like once a month or once every other week. And they would give me topics. And one of the topics came up was the Messiah, or Mashiach, as we call it. And I'm thinking, oh no, they want to talk about the crazies, because that's what I think about. So I go, oh, okay. So I studied about the Messiah, Mashiach coming, and I'm going, this is very interesting. And then I realize that the Orthodox community prays 3 times a day for the Mashiach to come. And I'm going, maybe something's real about this whole thing. Because meanwhile, I'm thinking everybody's crazy. Who thinks about this? So this is why I'm having a hard time with this topic. I understand what the Messiah is. What I have a hard time understanding is the coming of the Messiah or Mashiach. Because that's what you always talk about, the coming of it. So I would like for you to explain who is the Messiah and when is he supposed to come? Because it's my understanding that it's going to be any day, second, moment that he is going to be coming. So go ahead, Rabbi, explain away.
Okay, well, I think we're going to need another l'chaim here.
Oh, I agree.
Before who the Messiah is, because I don't really know that it matters as much who the Messiah is, that there is a Messiah. And more important than that there is a Messiah, there's the Messianic age. What's the Messiah going to do? I mean, that there's one person that's called Messiah and then the Mashiach, and he has a certain function that's good on him. But what about the rest of us?
Okay.
So let's take a step back for a moment.
And remember, we have 30 minutes and that's it.
Well,
so
this may need more than one.
This is going to be, part 2 and part 3 later.
Possibly, but that's okay.
Okay.
It's a good subject. It's an important subject because it's a timely subject.
Okay.
Because it's the era that we live in now. It's called the heels before Mashiach comes. We're at the end of as they say, the end of times, but not in an ominous way. But we're butting up, against the time when Mashiach will come.
Okay.
And so it's really in some ways more connected to our daily life than maybe what we've experienced in the past, because it's real and it's here. And so it's a topic that we need to not just discuss because, wow, this is interesting and complicated and it gets me tied up in knots, but because this is really supposed to impact how we live and operate on a regular basis. So the word Messiah in English is just it's an anglicized version of Mashiach, which literally means anointed one.
Mm-hmm.
Because the kings, Jewish kings, were anointed with a special oil that was prepared. And if you read the Bible, it was prepared in the desert. Various vessels in the tabernacle, the Mishkan, were anointed with this oil. And again, it was used to anoint King Saul, Shaul HaMelech, and King David, etc. So Mashiach literally means the anointed one. And his role will be to be the king of Israel. So in some ways, he'll be the Moses, Moshe Rabbeinu, and King David rolled into one. The king and the leader rolled into one, and he'll herald in a time which will be unprecedented. Now, what is it that is so significant about so the Hu Mashiach is, we know the role, we know the job description, we know the title. So the who it is, it's an interesting conversation, but I don't think it's as important, the who, that there is a Mashiach. But more important than that is, what is he going to do? And why should we care? And why should we be involved? And how should this impact us? So I think that the one of the ways to approach it, because as you know, everything in life, everything created has 6 sides. Like if you think about it, a proverbial cube, everything has 6 sides. So really, and they all lead to the center, and the center is the essence. So the 7th, like Shabbat, everything, all the 6 days of the week, they lead into the Shabbat.
Don't get too complicated here. Yeah, you're losing.
It's important.
Here.
It's important.
Okay.
Keep
it simple for stupid.
God forbid, not stupid. For the learning.
For the learning.
So everything leads into the 7. So how we approach any topic can be approached from one of 6 sides. So I don't know that this is, we're just going to choose a side and we're going to enter, because which side should we start from? It doesn't, we're going to start. Rambam, Maimonides, who was a world-famous doctor, world-famous theologian, world-famous philosopher, wrote his masterwork on Jewish law. And he culminates the 14 volumes of Jewish law. And it includes, he's the only one who codified Jewish law on every detail. Most of the codifiers of Jewish law only codified those laws that pertain to a world where there's no temple in Jerusalem on the Temple Mount. In other words, all the laws that have to do with Israel and with the temple and all those things, they never codified because they weren't practical to the day-to-day life of their communities. Whereas Maimonides went through everything. So if you read through the 14 volumes of the Maimonides called Yad HaChazaka, you will find he goes through in depth the laws of everything.
Okay.
And he concludes the last 2 chapters with the laws of Mashiach. So there are laws of Mashiach. What is the Messianic age? Who is the Messiah in terms of how can you identify a Messiah, etc.?
I heard or studied that the Mashiach is going to be coming through King David.
We are descendant of King David.
Descendant of King David.
Direct male descendant of King David.
And which they can do now because of DNA, and which is amazing.
I would hope that if the Mashiach comes, when he comes, that we won't need to come to the DNA. I think it'll be clear.
Okay.
And that's how Maimonides ends by saying that when Mashiach comes, and he quotes a verse from the Bible, that the world will have a sense of clarity, and we will see what really is. And I know we've discussed in past episodes about the idea of what we see is not necessarily all that there is to see. And so when Mashiach will come, one of the hallmarks of that period of time is that the world will see the world for what it really is. And that's really the ultimate purpose of so just as when we discuss Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, the world will come back to that state where that absolute clarity that they had prior to eating from the tree of knowledge, the world will be there and then some, because just to go back to fix the problem of eating from the tree of knowledge, to go back to the state right before the tree of knowledge would be a waste of time. It would have been a waste of the 6,000 years of history. So the idea that when Mashiach comes, we'll have a sense of knowledge. We will go back, we will repair the damage that was done by Adam and Eve eating from the tree of knowledge, and then all of the other divine energy that was brought into the world over the last 6,000 years will come as well. So that's really the era of Mashiach.
That's confusing, but
of course it's confusing.
Go ahead.
Because these are ideas that we don't talk about on a regular basis. And so now, why am I sharing all this? Why am I confusing? Why am I mudding the waters?
Yes.
Because it's not, when you started the segment, we're talking about seeing people talk about the end of times and thinking about them being the crazies. And they are the crazies. Why? Because what are they talking about at the end of time? They're talking about the world is going to end. This is a terrible place. We are terrible people. And the only way to be saved is to get on the mothership and to be rescued to some other dimension. And in that dimension, you'll get saved. So before it's too late, believe in X, Y, or Z, whatever it might be, so that you can be part of those that are going to be saved as this world goes burning down in flames, because this world is a terrible place.
Okay.
And so, yeah, that's crazy. This world isn't going anywhere.
Okay.
Why? Why isn't the world going there? Why isn't the world a terrible place? You look around, there certainly seems to be terrible things happening to the world. The world doesn't seem to be a particularly wonderful place for everybody. If you happen to live in a certain place at a certain period of time and have a certain socioeconomic background, yeah, the world is pretty good. You can live a pretty good life. But out of the 7 billion people that are on the planet today, or the 8 billion people on the planet today, the vast majority live horrible lives. So it's not so foreign to think that this world is a really unhospitable, terrible place that is just absolutely horrible to the people that live here. Why would you want it to survive? There must be some other dimension. We're here as kind of this is a portal, and if you make it through the portal and make the right decisions, you get onto this proverbial ship and you get saved. But that is completely antithetical to the basis of Judaism, to the basis of Torah, to the basis of no-hide laws, the basis of everything. Why? Because God created this world. This world didn't create itself. It came from somewhere with a purpose. And when God created this world, God put himself into this world. And if God is absolute goodness, then this world has in it absolute goodness.
Okay, but let's go back to who the Messiah is.
Well, God, I think that's part of the issue, is that before we get to the who, it won't make sense if we don't understand the process. So the process of what we are doing, when Adam and Eve sat in the Garden of Eden and then they ate from the tree of knowledge, they mixed the goodness and good and evil together. Now, why they did it, that's another conversation of why. Did they do it on purpose? Did they do it in accident? Was it a sin? What kind of sin? But what happened is when God created a world and put them in the Garden of Eden, a place that is absolute goodness, and in that place of absolute goodness, he put a tree that had good and evil, which means evil existed, but it existed in its own realm.
Okay, so
and by eating from the tree of knowledge, we mixed it to the point that today, when we look at the world, nothing is entirely good, nothing is entirely bad. Everything is a mix. You can look at you can do a good act, which is evil. You can do an evil act, which is good. In other words, with the appearance of it. So everything is kind of mixed up.
Say it's upside down.
Upside down.
Everything's upside down.
So how do we find clarity? So okay, as Jews, we find clarity in the Torah, through Torah and mitzvahs. But the point is that our job is to untangle and unwind the damage that was done by Adam and Eve by eating the tree of knowledge.
How do you even begin to untangle this mess that we're in?
By extracting the goodness in every situation. So when two people meet, they have a choice. We can gossip, we can be selfish and not talk at all, or we can have a conversation. How are we going to benefit a third party? And that's how you take a meeting or a conversation and you extract the goodness from the mundane. Or if somebody comes upon an act of evil, you have a choice. I can participate, I can hold back, or I can figure out how to help somebody.
Okay.
A mitzvah, I can do a good deed. I take my time, I take my money, I use it for the goodness.
It's going to take a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, well, we've been in exile for 2,000 years, and the world has been in a messiahless world for a long time. So why now? Because the further we get from, and the more we've been on kind of practicing and doing this, the more we've untangled, and the more we've exposed. And how do we know that we've gotten there? Well, let's mirror it, because we know that everything that was created, the Kabbalah talks about everything created being a mirrored image. Let's look at technology. 50 years ago, well, at this point it would be 70 years ago, 1950s. Most homes had a telephone. Just about 1950s, where most phones, you had a very long cord, and you had most likely a banana phone with a rotary dial. From there to today, in the past, let's call it 75 years, the phone has not only gone from being a rotary to being a touchstone to being now a touch screen, smaller, faster, everywhere, cheaper. The technology has zoomed so quickly So why is that? Why is it that suddenly in a very short period of time, I mean, we're no smarter today than we were 5,000 years ago. We have more information.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not necessarily smarter, because if you go back 5,000 years, they were farming. They knew they can taste the sand and tell you what to crop, what to plant, and what year this year based on the stars or whatever it is, when the rain is going to come. I mean, we know that there was a lot of wisdom in Egypt. They built the pyramids. There was all kinds of philosophers. I mean, they weren't this idea that we were cavemen until 250 years ago, and then suddenly we came out and we became all these sophisticated human beings is simply not true. Human beings have been.
So is science and technology accelerating?
Is a sign that the world and the spiritual worlds are accelerating, and it accelerates at the same pace. And that's why also Chassidic teachings, the teaching which is referred to as a teaching of Mashiach, the Mashiach era, the Messianic era, have also come on board about 250 years ago, and in an increasing rate. So the amount of wisdom that we have access to today is vastly larger than the amount of wisdom that we had 250 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago. Why? Because as we get closer to fulfilling our obligation to the world, the greater the tools that are given. And if I can put it in other words, when two countries go to battle, right? They begin with a skirmish. And you don't necessarily use your best artillery. But as a war progresses, you use more and you open up more, and the country has to open up its warehouses, it has to open up its wealth. Mm-hmm. But as you're getting to the end, when the one country said, okay, so we got to end this, you're like, you open everything. There's no holding back. When a king needs to win the war, when a country needs to win the war, you don't make any calculations of, well, everything goes. All the secrets, all the artillery, all the money, every last drop is expended in order to be able to accomplish the goal. When do you do that? When you see that on the horizon, we're there. We just need that little push to get right over.
So you're saying we're on the horizon?
We're on the horizon.
And what does that mean in the next?
It means...
Do we know?
Well, of course we don't know exactly, but it means that the Mashiach world is here. How do I know? I look at my life today. I look at all of the... It says when Mashiach comes, we'll see from one end of the world to another end of the world. And we always said, well,
but that can be a metaphor for
right. Vision.
It's all metaphorical.
Vision could maybe it's an actuality, but you have to believe that my vision will be so strong. I'll see from one end of the world to the other end, like Adam did in the Garden of Eden. Great, but we do that every day. You look literally from one phone call. You're sitting in somebody else's office through a Zoom call or your telephone with a video call. You can literally not just talk to the end of the world.
Google Earth.
You're Google Earth. We are everywhere. We are nowhere. The whole world has transformed itself. The speed of which we are able to do things and accomplish things is so astounding that the only conclusion is that that whatever secrets are in the world are being opened up and given to man. It wasn't because people weren't trying. Mm-hmm. So why suddenly were those gates opened?
Well, it's been said that when Mashiach comes, everybody will know within a split second.
Correct.
Now, if you look at our technology, yeah, you could say, hey, he's here, and text everybody and everybody around the world simultaneously.
Well, maybe Elon Musk is the Messiah because he has Twitter and
okay, that's another.
he has a one-up on the on disseminating the information. But all jokes aside, yes, it's precisely right. By looking through the physical reality of the world, we have to conclude there's something going on here because, like I said before, we are no smarter. And maybe I can even make the argument that we're less intelligent.
We are.
In raw intelligence.
Yes.
We're not building pyramids. We're not surviving in primitive conditions and things like that. So therefore, the fact is we have more access to wisdom, so we can build on that wisdom.
So that's one of the things that's going to happen before
Mashiach comes. So we're ramping up to an era when the world. There'll be such clarity that we'll see in the world. Now, when we talk about it from a theological point of view, from a godly point of view, we will see the godliness in everything. So we won't just see a chair, we'll see the godly emanation that's making and giving life to the inanimate, to the animate, to the animated, to the plant life, to the animal life. We will be able to perceive the godliness and see the godliness in everything. Yeah. But we will also see all the wisdom that exists in the world. Now,
So is this going to come like, oh my God, Mashiach is here and now we have wisdom?
yes and no. In other words,
It's going to be progression?
both are part of it. In other words, there's a piece that's a progression, which we are in today. Just look at the speed by which things are happening today, and
And all the
advances,
knowledge on the internet, you can
everything
access
that's going
everything.
on. I mean, look at AI. AI can analyze things and create things that we wouldn't even think about asking. We wouldn't even think about putting together.
Okay.
So there's clearly a progression of things that are taking place today before our eyes. But since we're living in it, we're not really necessarily sensitive to it. But then there will come a time that when the Messiah will come, where things will, as incredible as they are right now, are going to be 10, 100,000, 10,000 times as more powerful, because we just can't even perceive what it might be that we might perceive. So that's when we talk about what's going to happen. The Messianic age is an age of absolute clarity, which will bring to bear the rectification of Adam and Eve eating from the tree of knowledge, and the purpose of why God created the world. Who is Mashiach? What kind of person do you need to have to be the Mashiach? What is the role of Mashiach?
A teacher.
So when you have suddenly all this knowledge or access to knowledge, are we just going to understand it? So let's look at our own lives. Children are born with all of the faculties to be able to appreciate and to be able to absorb from the physical world around us.
Mm-hmm.
But they're unable to do any of that. They can hardly see in the beginning. They don't really necessarily, their sound is somewhat limited. Their mobility is limited. And it takes a teacher, a parent, it takes life in order to be able, and experience in order to be able to properly educate themselves in order to, and as they grow until they become an adult. So in many ways, wherever we are, wherever we're standing, when we're still in exile, whenever we're standing before the Messianic age, and how much we learn and how much we grow and where we're holding will serve us when Mashiach will come, because we will build upon that with suddenly the newfound wisdom, like anybody else. Whatever you know, and then you learn something new, you filter it through all of the previous knowledge that you have in order to place it in its proper place, in order to make it functionable, in order to make it usable.
So what you're saying is we have to start learning to prepare for this event?
Yeah. It's not so much the learning brings us to it, but when Mashiach will come, it'll also add to it. In other words, do we...
We'll see things differently?
Like, here's a question that's often asked. So Mashiach comes. I don't read Hebrew. Tomorrow morning I'm going to read Hebrew? Well, how are you going to read Hebrew if you can't read Hebrew?
Right.
Or I don't
understand
know
what you're reading.
I don't know anything about electromagnetism. Well, Mashiach comes and suddenly everything will be known. So am I suddenly going to become a physicist? And the answer is no.
Okay.
But we will have access and ability to see things and experience things that we never experienced before. But I'll have to learn about it. I'll have to study. So what will we do when Mashiach comes? We will sit and we will study and we will learn and we will grow and we will connect with the spirituality and the physicality. What makes Judaism very unique, just as a side tangent, is that the ultimate is not going on a mothership to some other place and escaping from this terrible world. This is the ultimate of creation. Earth is the ultimate of everything. And the Messianic age is the actualization of everything that's in the world.
You know, Bill Gates said something very interesting a while back. He said that it's going to become, we're going to have so much more time to study and learn than ever before because of the computer age, the age of computers. Mm-hmm. Hence AI, all of that. So I can see what you're talking about with studying and learning. I'm still very confused about what it's going to look like.
Even in the prophets that discuss the Messianic age, the discussion is not with a clarity of other discussions. Questions: how is it exactly going to look? What is it going to be? How is it going to be? And even in Maimonides, he writes from a legal point of view. There's a certain way it's going to look. Clearly, Kabbalah talks about it in other ways. So how is it going to look? You know what? I'm not concerned how it's going to look, because Mashiach will come. I know it's going to be good. I know it's going to be clarity, and then we'll have all of the details.
So is there going to be like a massive war and bombings everywhere? Because that's what it's talked about, how, the earth is going to be on fire and there's going to be wars everywhere. Well, we've got the fires in Canada and around the world going on. We have the wars going on, obviously. So I'm wondering, are we going to get to the point where we're just going to be decimated and then have to pray for the Messiah to come because this earth is going to be so horrible?
Messiah,
does it have to get to that point?
No, absolutely not. And it shouldn't get to that point. Messiah is not second best. If everything gets so screwed up that we turn to God and say, listen, we tried this. We've done everything we can't make heads or tails. Come, just save us. That's not Messiah. We work towards the Messiah. We make the world a better place.
Okay.
We talk about, yes, the prophets talk about wars. They talk about, but a war can be fought in many ways. A war does not have to be two nations or two groups of people pointing armaments at each other.
Could be cyber.
And fighting. It could be cyber. It could be financial.
Mm-hmm.
It could be there's all different ways. It could be philosophical. There's all kinds of ways that a war can play itself out. And we pray every day, God forbid, we don't want to have mass destruction in this world. The world, like we said, the purpose of the world wasn't that it should fall in on itself and destroy itself. The purpose of the world, the purpose of our lives, is to be able to extract the godliness, which is within every moment of our lives. One of the complicated issues that we face in the United States
mm-hmm.
is this idea that you have to become something to be something. So we ask our children. Recently I was speaking to a friend of mine. He says, I stopped asking my children, what do they want to be when they grow up? Because I realized by saying that, I was telling them that right now they're not enough.
Oh.
Which is a very sensitive realization.
Yeah.
And so the world, when you say, the world, we're not looking to become something. The world is a godly world. We have to take every moment and understand we are something because God created us. God created the world. We have inherent value. What we do is the responsibility of, if I am valuable,
mm-hmm.
then how do I express that value? You don't do something to become a good person. Because you're a person, you do good things.
Hmm.
If you're a person that does evil things, you're not a less valuable person. You're a person who has tremendous value expressing themselves in a terribly negative way, and in a destructive way. And that's, just as a side note, that's one of the terrible things that are facing a lot of the youth in this country today, is that we put so much stress and so much emphasis on the fact that you need to become something, that in the process we basically told a generation or two or three of people that you have no value inherently. If you have no inherent value, if life has no inherent value, this entire conversation makes no sense. But if we believe that God created the world and everything in this world, from every rock and every mineral to every plant and every animal and every atmospheric,
mm-hmm.
episode, is created by God.
And has a purpose.
And has absolute value, then what is that value and how do we express that value?
So everybody has a purpose.
Everybody has a purpose.
Everybody, okay.
Every meeting has a purpose. Every action has a purpose. Every
it's
interaction
not caused
has
by
a purpose.
randomness.
It's not
nothing
caused,
random.
Nothing random. And when you realize that, it's so empowering to think. You get up in the morning and the first thing you realize, you say, oh, I'm here.
Mm.
Why am I here?
Mm.
God wants me to be here. Well, that must be important to God. And if he's the creator, that's utmost and absolute importance. So how am I going to express that importance today? If we start looking to become something, we're basically telling ourselves, oh, I don't have any value right now. I could have value if I will do X, Y, or Z. Then I'll have value. And if I have value, then all these good things are going to happen. And so we're basically chasing our value. Wrong. Terrible. Absolutely has to be completely negated.
Mm.
We have value. Why? God gives us our value. Our existence is our value. Our actions is our expression of the value. And so taking that from the personal to the universe, to the cosmos, the world has value because God created it, and the world has a mission. And that mission is to untangle the goodness and the evil that are intertwined as a result of Adam and Eve, because that's what God wants. And therefore, every action that we do, every experience that we have, the choice is ours. Are we going to extract the goodness, or are we going to succumb to the apparent, natural order or whatever it may seem to us?
Yeah.
And when Mashiach comes, that challenge will cease to exist, because the clarity of the value.
And what's the clarity?
That godliness will be so revealed that it will not. Right now, you look around the world, maybe there's a God, maybe there's not a God, maybe there's something, there's not something. But that clarity will cease to exist. It will exist. And then from that point forward, we will operate differently, because we're not going to be operating in trying to overcome a challenge. We'll be operating in a way of how do we grow a positivity and a goodness.
Okay, so next time we speak, I would like to talk about what it's going to look like right before. Well, didn't we talk about that today?
We touched on it.
But let's continue that further for next time. Thank you.
L'chaim.
L'chaim.